Welcome to Dare, the show for innovators, entrepreneurs, and startup leaders who dare to shape the future. Your hosts today are Ned Hayes and Cecilia Mariani. Dare is brought to you by Darwaf, the superpower tech team that can make your vision a reality. The Dare podcast is excited to welcome Jelani Memory to the show today. He is the founder of A Kids Co., a media company that creates books and podcasts to help kids and grown-ups have meaningful conversations about things that matter. He's now had a successful exit from a part of A Kids Co. because he's now a vice president at DK, but the company continues. So he's going to tell us more about how that deal worked out. He's also the best-selling author of a kid's book about racism. He's a passionate advocate for diversity, equity, and inclusion. And his work has been featured all over the world, including in his previous startup, Circle. So we'll talk about his startup experiences and then hear about what's next. So welcome to the show, Jelani.
Happy to be here. Thanks for having me on.
Well, first of all, you recently had a significant exit. A Kids Co. made some changes. I see the books behind you on video here, because you're heavily invested in the success of this project. But tell us about what the deal that you did.
Yeah, really a dream come true. I had no experience in publishing when I started A Kids Co. back in 2019. I had written a book for my kids. They had responded really wonderfully to my little A Kids book about racism and encouraged me to do more with it. And so that I did. In the next 5 years, built out a collection of 200 plus books on challenging, empowering, and important topics. And we really pushed the envelope, both from how books were made through our wacky one-day workshop model process to what topics those books covered, from everything from racism to democracy to cancer, death, creativity, imagination, adventure, even one of our latest books on periods, all books designed for kids to start these big, tough conversations. And quite honestly, I wasn't sure whether any big company would ever be up for being a champion and or a caretaker of that series. And yet we got nothing but love from the rest of the publishing industry. I had the good fortune and privilege to chat with a number of different CEOs and executives who all were cheering us on from the sidelines and loved what we were up to. And the folks at DK and Penguin Random House have been fantastic partners. So we partnered with them for about 18 months before we struck this deal to bring the whole publishing operation over in-house. And so now there's a kids book about imprint, which I run. And we've got 200 plus backlist titles. And now we're working to create new series on big, challenging, empowering, and important topics. So yeah, just couldn't imagine a better outcome, not just for the team, for myself, but for this series and our authors, and sort of the ability to have this series live on and be an institution for children for generations to come.
Yeah, what I'm surprised by your work here is how brave you've been. You take on topics that people shy away from or people don't want to talk about, and you've opened it up to be part of a normal conversation every day, which is fantastic, because the more that we can bring these very personal and very important topics out from under hiding and actually make it part of everyday conversation, I think the more healthy we'll be. Do you agree with that?
I couldn't agree more. And look, there's all sorts of reasons why these conversations and topics are so uncomfortable for us and why they're so difficult to talk about. Parents today are at a total deficit because their parents didn't really bring this stuff up, right?
I can attest to that. Yeah.
Exactly. It just wasn't a thing. And so, parents of this generation are looking to change things and yet need tools. And these books, they're tools to start the conversation, but tools also to create comfort for the parent to go, oh, this wasn't as bad as I thought it was going to be. And also this gives me the words to say. And also my kid's so curious about this big topic. What was I afraid of anyways?
Right. I mean, kids are naturally very curious, and if we shy away from something, it'll actually make them more curious. Sometimes they'll find out information that is inaccurate or doesn't really reflect our family's values. So have you seen that this has helped parents to kind of refocus around what they're all about, what their family?
Of course. And I like to say that all of our books aren't for every kid. They're for the kids who need them most. And I love the idea of every family picking 3, 5, 10, 12 books that are the collection for their family that fit the ideas they want to share, the values they want to communicate, and the parts of the world that they want their kids to explore. I don't think everybody needs to get all 200 books. I just don't think that's the way that families work or even kids' books work. And they're able to open these conversations. And look, my hope is that parents are able to use these books to not need these books, to
Mhm.
start conversations and then keep them going and then be able to go, oh, wow, I think I actually know how to get into this other topic. And since I saw my kid do it in this other book, I think I can just do this solo. I'm all for that.
Yeah. Well, there is a consistent theme in your work, Jelani, because you did a previous startup called Circle that helped kids and families to understand how people were using their time. And now you're helping parents to connect with kids. I'm kind of drawing some connective tissue together here. And I guess I'm thinking of your work in these two areas as related to this book that I've been reading recently, The Anxious Generation by Jonathan Haidt,
Mm,
that's been a New
hmm.
York Times bestseller. And this is about how abdicating the responsibility to travel with your children and to understand what they're doing and to really be in community with them has degraded our society and degraded the experience of childhood. So I know there's a
Mm.
lot to put in here, but I'm curious if you could comment on that. I don't know if you've read the Jonathan Haidt book.
Yeah, and you're quite familiar with it. And look, like I never thought I'd spend almost my entire career working in the kids and family space. And
Yeah.
yet I can draw a direct line back to my own childhood, which was fraught and traumatic and full of neglect and abuse. My dad left when I was 4. I would barely see him a dozen times before I was 21. And so much of that led to me having this huge desire to be a really great dad, to be really involved in my children's lives and to do better, to give my kids better. And so that ended up working itself out professionally because entrepreneurs are always about solving problems. And I was solving my own problem of how do I give my kids the best childhood I can give them? Right. And so Circle was a manifestation of that. I saw that the world was becoming more connected, not less connected. And I love technology. So, how do I give my own kids the best of technology without any of the downsides? And so we started doing, a lot of the work that now it's pretty commonplace. Gosh, 12, 15 years ago with Circle to manage content and time online, pause the internet, set time limits, make sure your kid's not binging YouTube in the middle of the night. So bedtimes and having sort of reasonable content restrictions. And I'm really glad to see that much of that technology that we pioneered has been adopted by Google, by Apple. We had massive partnerships with Sky in the UK and T-Mobile here, who still sells our product. They call it Family Mode. And it really was born from this idea of watching my daughter grab my iPhone 3GS, right?
Way back.
uh, yeah, 3 years old, swipe to unlock, scroll to the YouTube app, tap on it, and find a video. And I thought, all the rules are out the door, right? Like
Yeah.
this is the paradigm shift is so dramatic. And now your average 8-year-old has a cell phone, has a supercomputer in their pocket. And so I'm a
Yeah.
big fan of helping families and kids manage their content and time online so that they have a really healthy relationship with it.
Yeah, when I use Circle, I actually found it super useful to limit my own time.
Yeah.
Am I actually with my family in the evenings or am I spending like half that time scrolling online? And then my kids see that. So being
Yeah.
able to monitor my own usage and understand who I was to my family really changed the game for me. So thank you for that. So, because our audience is a lot of startup people who are grinding and trying to do their best, I'm just curious if you could share like how you got into the role of starting companies. Like what
Mm.
gave you that impetus to launch Circle and now to launch a Kids About? I mean, it's hard to do. How did you get the grit to do that?
Yeah, I mean, there's a couple questions there. For me, I think I was only ever always going to be an entrepreneur. I love starting things from scratch. I love having sort of that itch to go, oh, there's something that interests me in this little intricate, interesting, provocative problem that I want to try and solve. And starting at that, garage level from scratch with some duct tape level to try and create something that solves that problem. When I started Circle, I was a freelance photographer, so I sort of had no business starting a tech company. But here's the catch: is like nobody has any business really doing that. It's not really about expertise. It's honestly, it's about having a direct personal relationship with that problem, with that
Mm,
thing you're trying to solve, because you're going to be best equipped to go, here's what the solution would be. Here's what would really solve this for me. And so for me as a young dad, high interest in technology for my kid and the desire for them to have their own phones and tablets eventually and computers, I was like, but knowing the sort of pitfalls of that, I was like, I think I know what I need.
mm,
So then it was about going, how do we find somebody who knows enough about circuit boards who can build this thing? And how do we know somebody who knows enough about raising money who can help us go, construct this company together? And it was as simple as that. And there's
yeah,
nothing more sincere and honest than going, hey, I want to go solve this problem. Do you want to come solve it with me? I
yeah.
think the skills that you have would be really advantageous to me. And I'm a big fan of like, go ask your friends, go ask your colleagues, go ask you know, your family members if you feel like they're going to be helpful along that journey. And so that's what I did. And it was a 10 plus year journey. I mean, from a failed Kickstarter to red eye flights to try and go pitch investors, on a whim, to running out of money, raising a little bit of money, running out of money, panic attacks, you name it. And I don't mean that from like we were grinding really hard. I mean it because we were so insistent going, we really think the future needs this. We have to
Mhm,
find a way to solve it. And we may not be the right people to do it, but we're the ones who are trying to solve it. And I'm really proud to say, after 3 years of duking it out, not paying myself a single dollar as the founding CEO, is we were eventually able to launch.
mhm,
Raised $1 million at the 11th hour from a 7-minute pitch to some investors in Atlanta. And, yeah, we lucked out finding the right manufacturer. We lucked out raising the right money. We lucked out getting the partnership with Disney, which is a long negotiation, by the way. And that luck came because we stayed in the game long enough to find it.
mhm.
And I noticed most startups fail because the founders quit, which is okay, by the way. Just let's not call it anything else other than it's like
Yeah.
you giving up. It's not because they ran out of money. It's not because a competitor came out with a product. It's because you gave up. And there's a lot to be said about just not giving up and squirreling your way into enough luck to make the thing work.
Wow, that's great advice. So, all you startup leaders out there, keep going. If you keep going, you'll survive most startups who quit early. Yeah, fantastic advice. And what I understand from your now most recent sale deal that you've done with DK, it's bought you the latitude to be able to pursue other things as well. So, you don't have to just be married to one direction for a kid's book about. You can do a lot of things right now, right? You have some freedom.
Yeah, I take the role of founder CEO really seriously. And so, sort of during that 5 year tenure, it was my job to build and grow the company. And I was laser focused on doing that. Now, being out of that role, moving into the exec chair role, and now sitting over at DK as a VP and publisher, there's just more flexibility on my time, attention, and stress load, if you will. And since I've built the muscles across the last 15 plus years to handle quite a bit of stress, I now find myself going, oh, I've got capacity to like sort of take a look at some of these other things that I've been thinking about for a bit. So a lot of that's amounted to some writing, some advising for startups, just fun little small interesting things. I've got a couple really fun board roles that I'm leaning into as well at a few nonprofits. So yeah, and will I eventually start another thing? Probably. Just being totally honest, being at DK, it's my first time at a big company, and look, I love it, but I also go like, these things tend to go in like 5 year cycles for me in terms of going and finding a new thing. And so, I'll give it 4 to 5 years and then we'll see what happens.
Fantastic. Yeah. Well, congratulations on that. You were in a recent panel discussion and you said you were surprised by how things moved at a kid's book about that things just took off. Like you'd written a book, a kid's book about racism for your own kids and your own
Mhm.
family. That took off. And you were like, well, there's more here. And so one thing led to another, right?
Yeah. Yeah. There's this, oh God, I think Mark Andreessen or Ben Horowitz said this. He said, if you have to ask whether you have product market fit, then you don't. It's just one of those things that's undeniable. And I remember having my little fledgling book that I had written for my kids, and I wanted to go show it to a friend. So I was sitting at a coffee shop, it was sitting on the table, and a woman walked up and said, "Where can I buy that book?"
Mm.
Was like out of like a TV show, you know? It was like, and I was like, a what book?" And she's like, "A kid's book about racism." And I was like, and I genuinely, I didn't know what to say because it was like,
Yeah.
well, you can't buy it. And also, this is my book. And also, it's my only copy of this book. But like that, crossing that chasm from I have an idea and I made a thing to someone will pull out their credit card or their checkbook or give me their email address to get this thing, like that. I don't care what anybody says. That's product market fit when somebody
Yeah.
wants a thing that you have made. And I just sort of then dove into a number of experiments to go, is there really a there? And I found every adult that I showed the book to wanted to take it from me and go read it to their kid.
I wanted to take it from you.
Yeah.
Buy it? Yeah.
And I thought, what have I made? Because I was so laser focused on making a thing for my kids. And then I realized like, oh, I've made something that actually solves a really acute problem for parents, which is how do I start this conversation? When do I start it? What's the right tools to use to start this conversation? Should I even start it? And the book sort of answered just all those things in a really
Mm.
simple package, which is like, this is the thing you need. And so the sort of magic insight was, oh, that scales actually. That scales to all these other tricky topics. That
Mhm.
scales to all these other really incredible identities who typically aren't reflected in these stories for kids in the same way that I hadn't felt like mine was in kids literature. And so it was really one foot in front of the other, one insight in front of the other, really sort of, putting my head down and learning as much as I could about how the publishing industry worked because I didn't really understand it. And then also understanding what unique and what I'll call unfair advantages I brought to this game of making books. And it turns out I had all sorts of unfair advantages in that having not grown up with a dad meant I was hyper focused on what made a good father. Having built a company previously that was direct to consumer, I was uniquely primed to go start a direct to consumer publishing business, which, by the way, most publishing businesses are not direct to consumer. Having spent 2 decades designing things, being really bad at it for a long time, and then getting quite good, meant that I didn't have to hire a designer. I could kind of do it maybe myself and,
Mhm.
make these books really design focused and design forward. So there was a number of things that I thought, oh, these aren't disadvantages. These are actually massive advantages and putting all these pieces together. And so like, I'm not a big fan of like work on your weaknesses when it comes to company building, like lean 1000% into all of your strengths and go find people who do all the things that you're weak at. Like, don't even try and be good at those things because it's going to take too long to get good at them.
Yeah.
And that's what having a great team is. Like, I don't know, like Steph Curry is never going to play like LeBron. He's just not. That's why there are five guys on the floor and not just one, right? And
That's
so,
really great advice. Yeah. Find the people who will play the ball in the court their way rather than trying to play all the positions. Yeah.
yep, exactly.
Fantastic. Yeah. So you have so many interests. You have several successes under your belt. I'm curious, what refills your engine? What fuels your fire?
Yeah, a couple things, and they're really simple. One is walks. I love going on a walk. There's something really simple about just moving your body and listening and feeling the air and just being present in that. So that's huge for me, actually. Reading, I'm a big reader. I wasn't always a big reader, but I love books. So give me a good speculative science fiction book, and I'm all in. And then the last is time with my kids. I have made it a habit and a practice to be at everything for my kids. I have missed holiday parties with investors. I have missed pitch meetings. I've missed award ceremonies just to go to a silly, stupid thing for my kid because it's not silly and it's not stupid. Like they remember that stuff.
Uh-huh.
And the reality is like, I don't know, XYZ investor, like they don't remember whether I was at that thing or not. Like they're okay. But my kid will remember whether I was at that third soccer game that they just got destroyed in by some team and it was raining. They'll remember whether I was there or not. Right. And I'm basically helping them write the entire future story of my relationship to them in their lives while they were kids, once they're adults. I've always wanted to be really good at that. And so I've made that a practice. And that's not just enriching for them, it's enriching for me.
Yeah. What a great answer. Thank you. Yeah. It's the little things that matter the most sometimes.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's not, some folks might view it as like either their kids are testing them or their expectations are too high, or I don't know, or their feelings shouldn't get hurt so easily, or whatever. But I think sometimes it's you want to be almost so boring to your kids that it's healthy. And
Right.
what I mean by is like if your kid's going, will he or won't he come tonight to my game?
Yeah.
I hope he does, but gosh, he hasn't made it to the last three. And anxiety, anxiety, anxiety. Like my kids just take it for granted. Like it's boring that I'm just
Yeah.
there at all this
Like
stuff.
always there, always consistent, always showing up.
And that means how their model will be for when they are parents themselves someday. And also just there's just all the fringe benefits of having consistent positive adults in your life who are showing up for you, that I still have, like, I'm like Swiss cheese for all the holes in me, for all the adults that we're missing,
Yeah.
like I'm still that way and I'm 41. And so to have those things, to leave your kids sort of happy, healthy, and whole as they enter adulthood is critical. And again, I just can't stress enough is like, it's not taking away something from me in my career. It's giving me something, which is like, I don't know, fulfillment. Is the
Yeah,
best way to look
absolutely.
at it.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Kids give back. It's astonishing what you get by really showing up for your kids. I can attest to that. Yeah. Well, thank you for the great conversation. And I have two more questions for you. One is, what about Portland? Like, I'm in Portland. I love Portland. I love seeing Portland expand and be a great place for startups and nurture people. But Portland got a bad rap for a few years there during the pandemic. And I'm excited to tell people how great Portland is. So why are you in Portland?
Yeah. Well, look, first and foremost, I'm a hometown kid here in Portland. Grew up, born and raised here. Shout out Capitol Hill Elementary School, like, Jackson Middle School, Ida B. Wells High School. Like, I love this city.
Mhm.
And I can definitively say that, I've been able to watch it grow up and change, and not change in some ways and change in some really wonderful, beautiful ways. And I'll say, like, I was really proud of my city showing up in 2020 that summer and protesting for as many weeks. Like, we outlasted many other cities that you'd think would outlast us. And I think there was folks wanted to be vocal, folks wanted change, folks wanted to see progress. And I think that's really remarkable. And look, the city has tons of problems, but the city is also like not willing to just live with those problems. It's really taking a hard look at those things. But I
Mhm.
think there are some big cities that just go, oh, that's just the way it is. Like, it's not going to change. So we're just going to leave it that way. And so, kudos for Portland to continue to relook at those problems. I think, look, we're on the up and up. Like, things continue to grow and get better. I think this is one of the best cities in the world to start a company in. The creative talent is off the charts. So don't go anywhere else. If you're looking to start something, start it here.
That is such a great shout out to Portland. Thank you. I heartily agree. Last question for you, Jelani. What do you dare to dream?
What do I dare to dream? I when I started the kids book about series, the big sort of dare and dream was, what does a generation of kids who grow up with these stories look like as politicians, as teachers, as entrepreneurs, as parents, as caregivers, as nurses and doctors and lawyers? Like, what sort of future can they build by having been empowered by diverse voices, by these challenging stories, by getting let in on all the secrets that the adults around them are too afraid to talk about, and yet they
Yeah.
need so desperately? And that, like, that's the thing I'm sort of keeping in my back pocket, is going, if I do my work now, I'll get to see that 10, 20, 30 years from now, what these kids get up to, in the same way that, like, you, me, and everyone else were, the generation of being impacted by Fred Rogers, the Mr. Rogers Show, and
Yeah.
Reading Rainbow, right? And Sesame Street, and. So The hope is not just to have an iconic book series, cool, that's nice to have my name on that. But even better is to go, what if there were real generational change where we had a more empathetic, thoughtful, anti-racist, inclusive, equal generation of grown-ups? I think we'd have a lot less problems than we do today.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for that wisdom and for all the insight that you're sharing with audiences young and old and helping us to grow up as a city and as a community. Thank you.
Oh, my pleasure. Well, thanks for having me on.
Thanks to our guests today for their great insights on DARE, the podcast for innovators, entrepreneurs, and startup leaders. If you'd like your story to be featured on DARE, just contact us at info@darwaft.com. DARE is brought to you by Darwaft, the tech team that can make your vision a reality.